On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, is there a market for Deshaun Watson? And what will be the ramifications for the Houston Texans if they're not able to move on from Watson this offseason? But first,
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
welcome, Locked On Texans fans, to another episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm John Hickman. Of course, I'm joined by none other than Cody Davis, here to talk the Houston Texans. And mainly, I think this is a perfect show to discuss the future of Deshaun Watson, and how, especially considering that the Giants owner, John Mara, has came out and said we are not going to trade for Deshaun Watson. Eagles general manager Howie Roseman already mentioned that Jalen Hurts will be the quarterback for the 2022 season, at least the start of the season. And now it seems like this market that a lot of people thought was huge for a quarterback facing 23 allegations, sexual assault allegations, have now shrunking a little bit. I only see two teams still in the mix seriously for him. That's the Carolina Panthers and the Miami Dolphins, and even Stephen Ross, who has been on record. Does he want him? Does he not want him? Was a conversation there? Did he answer the phone? That's been a back and forth speculation as well, Cody. So, Deshaun, man, it seems like what a lot of people were hoping for, that it would get it done before the NFL draft rolls around. That way, those picks are secured. There's a lot of uncertainty surrounding whether or not he will be departing from this franchise soon.
Look, I hate asking the question, will there be a market for Deshaun Watson? Of course there's going to be a market for Deshaun, because it doesn't matter what took place off the field. At the end of the day, you're still looking at a situation where he is still one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the game, a quarterback who could come in and actually change your organization. And John, it's as much as we want to sit here and talk about Deshaun, as much as we want to sit here and talk about whether or not there's going to be a market for him, at the end of the day, with the New York Giants, coming out today, and I think out of all the teams who are coming out saying that they are not interested in Deshaun, I think the New York Giants might be the one who are telling the truth the most, because of the way the owner actually came out and actually backed their current quarterback.
Absolutely.
So,
I agree.
And that was very telling. And I say all that just to say, with the Giants backing out, with the Eagles, potentially backing out, at least for the time being, and even down there in Carolina, you're looking at 3 situations where, when we first heard the news that Deshaun Watson wanted out of Houston, and outside of Miami, these were other teams that he was considering, according to reports. We kind of laughed at those situations. We're like, how in the hell is going to New York and Philly and Carolina better than what you have right here in the city of Houston? It was kind of funny. Now, that situation does not look so good for the Houston Texans on the side of things, only because with these teams backing out and not pursuing Deshaun Watson, now you're looking at a situation where Deshaun is going to be forced to open up his suitors and say, okay, I cannot go to my top destinations. Here are the next list of teams that I want to go to. That is a scary situation for the Texans, because now that is putting Houston in a situation to where you are basically going to deal him to, let's say, one of the teams who are a quarterback away. When you take a look at the landscape of the NFL right now, you take a look at teams who they just might need a quarterback to get them over the hump. Of course, you got to take a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got to take a look at the situation that's going on in New Orleans right now. Hell, I even throw in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if Tom Brady's retired. I say all that just to say, if the Texans are forced to trade Deshaun Watson to one of those teams, you're looking at a situation to where the Texans were on the verge of getting for sure a top 10, top 15 pick back in return for Deshaun Watson services, not just for this year, but next year as well. Because look, if Deshaun would have went to Carolina, Philadelphia, or New York, I think we all can agree that, yeah, he probably would have made them, not probably, he would have made them a playoff caliber team, but they would not have been in Super Bowl contention. But if he go to Pittsburgh, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, or hell, I throw San Francisco in there as well. If he go to one of these teams that's just a quarterback away, now you're looking at a situation where the Texans are going to be forced to take back a package to where your first round picks are not going to be as high. You can go from having what, let's say the 12th overall pick in the 2023 draft all the way down to let's say the 27th overall pick, because we all know Deshaun Watson is a game changer and he is that good on the field. So John, this isn't looking good for Deshaun. This isn't looking good for the Texans. And if I'm Deshaun in the Texans, I'm trying to figure out a way, how can we learn the lyrics to Kumbaya and see if we could come together and make this work, because neither one of these situations is looking good for both parties involved.
What's the problem if he goes to another team and makes him a contender? That has nothing to do with the Houston Texans' future. I'll tell you why. They're not going to be contending for anything during this time span. I don't think so. So if he goes to a Pittsburgh Steelers team, if he goes to, I think, a Denver Bronco, honestly, I think the Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers are two of the same kind, where they're receiver ready, they're running ready, they're defense ready, they're just not quarterback ready. So who cares to where he goes? The only issue is if he doesn't go to a team that can give you the quality of first round picks, because you're still going to get first round picks back, right? Then you look at that number 3 pick and say, okay, now Houston has to really analyze, do they want to keep it, or do they want to use that, first round pick, trade back, get another first round pick, and then more picks throughout the draft? Depends on what team he goes to rather. But who cares where he goes? I mean, the relationship between these two are broken beyond mending fences. I think so. And, you find a kumbaya moment. That's fine to find the best suitor, because I do think that he may have to look at opening up his preferences. And let's be clear, we don't know what his preference is outside of the reports of Miami. And I still think Miami is the team. I don't know why that relationship is so weird at this time, but it's kind of weird to me why Miami has always been consistent and constantly there in these reports. And Stephen Ross, who's tried to play coy, at times he's looked like a liar, if I'm being frank. But overall, it doesn't matter where he goes. Only thing that matters is what Houston gets in return for the next couple of years. So if he goes to a team and make them a contender, so be it. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Now, what we do have to look at is the possibility of teams still wanting to wait and see how this is going to play out with these cases, because you are going to look at franchises that if you want Deshaun Watson, you're going to have to pay the price. And obviously, if you want him, that's because you think he can do wonders with your roster, i.e. Panthers, i.e. Broncos, i.e. Dolphins, i.e. The Eagles, who were, named, and the Giants was speculated as well. So you're going to give up a lot, and you're also going to have to go hand in hand and face the scrutiny of, why did you bring in a alleged serial sexual assaulter? That's something these franchises are looking at as well. I think the New York Giants, who's in the biggest media market in New York, of course, outside of the LA Lakers or things of that nature, or teams of those natures, they're in the biggest media market, and they're going to get hit with those questions. I don't think the New York Giants is in a position where they can answer those questions and make it make sense for the media, because of how bad you've been, because of the questionable decisions that they've made in the past. So that is what these franchises, I believe, are looking at. Are we going to be ready to take this PR hit? Are we going to be able to stand by it through and through? And after we stand by it, will he even get us to where we project we can be if he comes to this roster? So I have no problem with teams, the other teams on the outside looking in saying we're going to wait to see what this market is really going to look like because there's other quarterbacks out there that may be able to swing. Look at the Aaron Rodgers, right? But eventually, this deal has to get done before the draft. If not, the second offseason in a row where Houston failed to move on from Deshaun Watson when they had an opportunity to pounce on it.
Well, it's not the Texans' fault because if he wasn't doing whatever the hell he was doing off the field, he would not be in this damn situation, plain and simple.
Absolutely. Hey guys, we want to tell you about an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. GetUpside. Our listeners are earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free GetUpside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use promo code touchdown for NFL or college for score for college for 25 cents per gallon off on your first fill up cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using GetUpside. Just download the app for free and use promo code touchdown for NFL or score for college. Welcome back in, everybody, to the Locked On Texans podcast. Remember, we are free and available on all major platforms, and thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Cody, there's no way around it. If the Houston Texans do not move on from Deshaun Watson, I think that'll be a major stain on Nick Caserio's resume, at least in the first 2 years. The ramifications of them not being able to move on from him in back-to-back off seasons where it has been expressed over the course of time he does not want to be in Houston. There were trade suitors out there. I believe that Houston did not strike when the iron was hot the first time before things got out of hand, and now they've been forced to play the waiting game. Now, when we look at the ramifications of him not being able to, get traded, here's the question. Does he come back and play? I don't think he can.
Hell no.
I don't think that. I think that relationship is, like I mentioned earlier, it's too broken, right? But Houston still sits at number 3. And I believe a lot of folk, fans, not just fans of the show or viewers of the show, just fans of the Houston Texans in general, they were looking at a situation where, hey man, we're going to get a lot back for Deshaun Watson. We're going to kill it in the draft, and this may be a quick turnaround. Well, if you do not make that trade for Deshaun Watson, you do not get the overhaul back in the draft, in this upcoming draft, and you sit at number 3. Does it make more sense, Cody, in your opinion, for Houston to move on from that number 3 pick, trade back, get more picks back in order to give themselves the best opportunity at a thorough rebuild? Or do you sit at number 3 and take the best available to move forward with the franchise?
You said at number 3 and take the best available to move forward with your franchise, because it doesn't matter if they move on from Deshaun Watson this offseason or next offseason. Eventually, you're going to get that haul back in return. And that is another issue that's holding up this whole entire process. John, you mentioned that if the Texans do not move on from Deshaun Watson this offseason, it's going to be a major stain on Nick Caserio. I'm going to say it's not, because, look, ever since those allegations came out, a lot of teams have been trying to get Deshaun Watson on a discount. And like I just said on the last segment, and like I say here countless of times on Locked On Texans, Deshaun Watson is a generational talent. And Nick Caserio deserves to wait and get the offer that he wants, or at least come close to the value that Deshaun Watson is worth. And if he has to sit out another year, which would be kind of crazy, and I don't know how in the hell would this work, because he is due 30 to 35 million for this upcoming season. But if Deshaun Watson has to sit out, the Texans will be okay with that. And that's only because they are making sure they get what Deshaun Watson is worth on the field. And can't nobody get mad. No, but that's the thing. Can't nobody get mad at this situation but Deshaun. Like I said in the first segment, if he didn't get himself in this stupid situation, he would have been gone. So he's going to eventually get it. And like John McClain said on Sports Radio 610 last week, as soon as everybody gets some clarity on this whole legal situation, then the process can continue moving. But if I'm Nick Caserio, John, and I know you disagree, I'm going to stand my ground and not trade Deshaun until I get the value that he is worth, because you don't want to just settle just to move on from Deshaun, and next thing you know, you realize you could have got a lot more back in return, especially considering that there's still a possibility that what he is being accused of is still a whole bunch of he say, she say type things going on.
$40 million, even with the fines that Houston can rain down on Deshaun Watson if he chooses not to play or participate, they're going to pay him a lot of money. $10 million is okay. You use that money, take care of your legal fees, clean some of this mess up that you made, pay off what you need to pay off, make sure your lawyers are getting taken care of and their pay as well. That 10.5 is okay. But when you look at $40 million, ladies and gentlemen, that's not something that you can easily just, okay, that's all right. That's 4 times of what you were paying him not to play football. I don't see Houston being able to sit through that. Like I said, even with the fines, because the longer he's on your roster, the more he becomes your problem, your headache. And he's been your problem so far. And I'm sure Nick Caserio, who's just wanted to come in and do his job and, eat his salad and go home, that has put a dent in what he believes he can bring to this franchise, because it's important to move on from him. So I think the biggest ramification, if I look outside of the draft, because I think immediately that's affected first, the draft. I don't think this will affect your head coach, because your head coach is going to come into this situation understanding that this will not be my quarterback, compared to last year where maybe we can sway him back. No, he's not coming back. So your head coaching position will be filled, and they'll know we got to move around, move forward without Deshaun Watson. They get that. They understand that now we sit at number 3 compared to last year, where number 3 last year was the 3rd round. They know they're in a better situation. I don't think it's going to affect your head coach as much as it will the NFL draft, because if you get those trades back, those picks back from their trade, you're looking at a Houston Texans team that can look totally different from the 4-13 year they just had. May not be, a huge jump in win percentages, but depending on who they bring in as head coach, how they move forward with the offensive coordinator, bring those picks in, add to the offense, fix that run game, this team may win an extra couple of games. Compared to, are you going to win in free agency? Are players going to willingly want to come to Houston? That's another reason why this affects this Houston Texans team this next couple of months. Because between free agency and the draft, this is the time where you want Deshaun Watson off your roster so you can scout well to really bring in guys from the draft as your foundation to continue what you did last year, and then you add those small pieces in free agency so you won't have to, take too much of filling holes throughout the draft. Deshaun and those ramifications, if he is still on Houston's roster past the free agency period, I think will really hurt Houston's chances of being successful this year.
I don't agree with that. I mean, look, it doesn't matter if they trade Deshaun. God bless you, by the way. It doesn't matter if they trade Deshaun or not. The 2022 season is just going to be another year of development for a lot of these young players. And yes, you could debate whether or not they can go from, let's say, 4 wins to, like, let's say 6 or maybe 7. But I just do not see Nick Caserio trading Deshaun just to say, I'm tired of this situation, we'll accept any offer. Because Deshaun, when he signed that contract extension a little over a year ago, we thought for sure that this man was going to be the most important piece to this organization for the next 5 to 6 to 7 years. Even though he wants out of Houston and he is gone out of Houston, he is still the most important, valuable piece to the Texans organization, probably even more so for the next 5 to 7 years because of what you can get back. And John, like, it's just a crazy situation because it doesn't matter what the Texans did. The reason why we are sitting here talking about whether or not Houston can move on from him over a year after he first demanded his trade is all because of him. And he's even making it even harder because he only wants to go to Miami or
Allegedly.
Philadelphia, or New York, or Carolina. And 3 out of the 4 teams already said, we would like to get you, but we kind of don't want you. So I can't wait to see how this play out, because you give it until free agency. I'm going to give it until the start of OTAs, because I've been told that the Texans will be okay paying him to sit out another year, because they're hell bent getting on what they want. But John, I refuse to believe that, because like you mentioned, $40 million to do absolutely nothing.
I gotta throw this idea out there. We've mentioned Carolina, we've mentioned New York, we mentioned Miami, we mentioned a lot of different teams. Well, I could see a team that's a quarterback away from being good again. And that's the Washington football team, who is known to embrace scandal. So I want to throw that name out there as well. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march through the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the #1 spot for all of the best sports wagering action for 2022. A new year and a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up. So sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code Locked On to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all of the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Welcome back in, and thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Be sure to check out the Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q, with handicapping expert and analysis from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all major platforms. Cody, should anybody on the Houston Texans coaching staff feel disrespected that they were not requested an interview for the head coaching job? Lovie Smith, we talked about him. Pep Hamilton. Even when you look at Romeo Crennel, who's in an advisory role, I'm sure that he doesn't want to coach. I know I know that he doesn't, want to be considered, but Josh McCown, Hines Ward, and nobody from this Texan coaching staff can, at least get a call. By the way, Josh McCown turned down a head coaching assistant job from the Houston Texans in 2020. So they've wanted him for a long time. And what did I mention earlier? When they want a guy, they want a guy. They're going to wait for him. They waited for Nick Caserio, and maybe Josh McCown is the guy that they want to wait for. But any disrespect?
To answer your first question, yes. Lovie Smith is the one guy I would say should feel kind of disrespected, especially given the great job that he did with this defense. And, he is a head coach, like we mentioned a couple weeks ago. He has a lot of experience being a head coach in this league, a very successful one. We know about the job he did with the Chicago Bears, and, his time with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wasn't that good. I mean, I think his final year, they was actually tanking for Jameis Winston. We saw how that turned out. But, I say all that just say, yeah, I mean, Lovie Smith may be the only one. And Pep Hamilton, to a certain extent, only because he only has had, I want to say, I think it was 2, maybe 3 years as the offensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts on the time.
Josh McCown has
and that's where I was about to get to, And I just want to know right now what the hell is going on off of 16 and Kirby, because I find it very ironic that Pep Hamilton, speaking of Hamilton, had 2 teams, and one of them was the Carolina Panthers, 2 teams that wanted to interview him for an offensive coordinator role, and he turned both of them down. And as of right now, he's still the quarterback coach for the Texans, but everybody is speculating that he's going to be the new offensive coordinator for Houston, which means Nick Caserio is trying to put himself in a position where he's trying to hire the staff of the new head coach. Where are we going with this coaching search, John? And if you just give me a quick moment, this is another example of the Texans having a lot of potential to put themselves in the right direction to fix their franchise. And I just have this fear deep inside me, John, that we're going to get this notification 9 times out of 10 from Aaron Wilson. And it's going to say the Houston Texans have hired Josh McCown. John, that scares me.
Well,
I'm not going to lie.
So
Because it makes no sense.
Well,
he shouldn't even be a candidate.
Here's the thing. I don't care who Houston chooses to hire as head coach. At this point, I've seen that, Houston has only interviewed 4 guys.
I think 5.
Kevin has not got interviewed yet.
So it's 4.
Hines Ward, Brian Flores, Joe Lombardi, and Jonathan Gannon. Jonathan Gannon was very impressive. They want to bring him back. Brian Flores, you would think would have gotten a second interview by now. There's been no movement as of right now on this head coaching search.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but by the way, I'm surprised Brian Flores haven't got a second interview with nobody as of right now.
Well, that's not that surprising to me. It's more so surprising for not the Texans, but not the rest of the league. But so Houston has only officially interviewed 4 candidates. You are a franchise that will be having 3 coaches in 3 consecutive years. There should be a high priority on getting this right, and we haven't seen them at least request interviews with any of the, hotter coaches in the league, hotter coordinators in the league. Hell, I don't know why Doug Peterson isn't getting any calls. So it does not really matter to me who they hire next. They better just win some games.
But here's my thing on this, and this kind of popped in my head a couple days ago. Most likely when we were talking about the possibility or why they have not called Brian Daboll. Maybe they are calling and people are just not answering the phone. Maybe people are, looking at that situation in Houston. Nah, I'm good. Yeah, I understand. Like David Culley used to say, this is 1 of 32, but I don't want that one. Maybe that's just a fact to throw out there because out of the 9 head coaching vacancies, the Texans might have the least attractive one. I mean, you could kind of make an argument against the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Giants. I talked about that on yesterday's show, but I mean, it's still not that very attractive, especially considering that you might be going into a micromanaged situation where you have Nick Caserio looking over your shoulder for everything that you do.
It may be the case. And you know what? Let me rephrase my statement. It does matter to me who Houston chooses to be their next head coach. The process doesn't matter to me because they've been very underwhelming for the past 2 seasons, and so I don't expect anything to change as of right now. I just know that they have to get it right because if you don't, then we'll be right back this next offseason talking about why would you bring in a candidate that doesn't make any sense. Thank you guys for checking out the Locked On Texans podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans and like us on Facebook. Continue with subscribing to the YouTube page as well at Locked On Texans.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. John, really quick. You speaking of, we be back in this situation this time next year. There is no possible way that the Texans could put themselves in a position where they'll be paying, let's say, that coach that got fired, David Culley, and Bill O'Brien going into the 2023 season. That's not possible, huh, John?
KG said anything's possible.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.